It's now a tradition to battle other gacha fanbases via the monthly revenue PvP chart. And while we're at it, since most gacha games are releasing on Steam, I would like to see some player count PvP action as well. In any case, while most people fixate on the top 50 of earners finding justifications on why their favorite game is better than another's, no one really focuses on the rest of the list. Indeed, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom of the supposed recorded gacha game revenue, you'll discover another world. These are the bottom feeders that are so irrelevant that hardly anyone will notice. Which makes me question what exactly did these games do so poorly to place them this low. My name is Psyche, and this is Dead on Arrival, a series where I uncover the most obscure but still playable gacha games and discuss if they're truly beyond any hope of recovering, or are somehow hidden gems that just flew under the radar. I had some people in the last video say that the term is just too harsh to describe dying gacha games, but let me assure you, there's no better candidate for this title than the game I will be talking about. This is AllFiring, a simple action brawler with chibi avatars and a unique art style. I played it for a week or so, and while the quality is certainly fine for a gacha game, the amount of buzz surrounding it is basically non-existent. And unless they pull off a miracle, I think it's extremely unlikely this game will flourish. So, while it's still in the realm of uncertainty, let's have a brief look at what it's about and whether or not it deserves its fate. Now, I must start by saying that whenever I cover a game with a sizable player base, I usually have to be careful to tailor my critiques so as to not to misrepresent the game. However, if we're talking about an extremely niche small game, I can generally get away with more unhinged and biased takes since, who's gonna defend this game? All 7 of its players watching this? Okay, I'm not that serious about it, but let's first go through some logistics of the game. The original Chinese name for the game was Ring of Fire Prometheus, but was later changed to AllFiring. Supposedly, this game has been in development for around 5 years, and the CN server has had a head start in content. Here's some extremely early footage teased all the way back in 2021. The global server launched in May, so just over a month ago. Now, I should note that the global version is different from its native servers in a few ways. One of which is that in the global version, there's no voice acting. There's still voices for when characters do generic grunting sounds in combat, but both within and outside combat, there's nothing. At first, I thought I had to enable it since it's one of those games where the voice pack is downloaded separately, but there was just nothing in the options menu. Except if you take a peek at the Chinese version, all characters do have voiceovers, and some important story points are voiced too. My only guess is that they either couldn't figure out how to port it over, or thought that it didn't fit with the fantasy setting that the game portrays. In any case, it's incredibly odd, but the global version is shafted in a few ways. When it comes to the first month's profits, at least according to Sensor Tower, it was around 40,000. This is way below the usual norms for any relatively unknown gacha game that has had even a little bit of marketing. So it begs the question, why? Generally, a company would be placing some ads, uploading some interviews, and sponsoring a few creators here and there to spread the word. But it seems the turnout for this game on day 1 was just underwhelming. Let's go into the actual game and critique its first couple hours of content to see where exactly things went wrong. I can argue that a game should present the introduction well, since that's the thing everyone will see going into the game. So let's analyze the opening sequence. You play as an unknown figure that's probably quite important, but due to the mysterious girl freezing you in place and uttering some vague and ambiguous monologue, your identity is left in the dark. Eventually, you become unfrozen and are discovered by 2 adventurers. When they ask who you are, it turns out you have amnesia. Oh, who could have seen that coming? A gacha protagonist with amnesia? How original. In any case, you're reminded that this isn't a safe place and you should go along to safety, thus starting your adventurer career in the hunt for knowledge of who you are. The game mixes a combination of 3D blocky terrain with chibi stylized 2D avatars. Immediately, you can see that at least the art style is something that can draw you in, as it's definitely a bizarre combo of presentation I haven't seen much of before. You can move around your avatar, normal attack, dodge, then do a counterattack if you timed it, Use the skill after accumulating enough points for it, and use the ultimate. If an enemy has a broken posture bar, you can also unleash a unit's finisher attack that does a big chunk of damage. There's a jump mechanic that's mostly used for traversal, and you can even do a slam attack while in mid-air, though I don't really see why you would do this normally. Of course, it's almost customary to have a party switch-in system, so you can do these QTE attacks when you switch to the 2 other party members at certain times. There's serviceable animations, and the alt cutscene is also fairly simple. I get the impression that it's likely a small but dedicated team that managed to put all this together. So if that's the case, as long as this quality keeps up, I can see it having a place for people that want a simple and cozy action game. Some of those scenes actually look quite good, and this is clearly what they spent the most time polishing to get right. At some point during the intro, the game will ask you for a rating, in which the on-screen character will become sad if you rate it 3 stars or below. You wouldn't want to do that, would you? In any case, I think some games started doing this since it tries to present its best during the prologue. Then after it's got your rating, that's when they start throwing the time gating and gacha stuff at you. But back to the prologue. In the midst of jumping across gaps and slashing foes, there is a weird wheat currency on a ledge, but no way to get there. Then I find a not-so-hidden path to the north that reveals a puzzle to get to that ledge. I like this. This portion is actually not mandatory for this level, but I do appreciate that they nudged the player to explore outside the linear path and see more of what it has to offer. As you explore the maps, the world is laid out in different sections, all with teleport points for easy travel. If there's a group of enemies you have to farm for materials, then they're not allowed to leave the boundaries of their arena, so you can just walk straight past them if you want. There's also hidden chests scattered around that give minor loot, so it has a splash of open world elements, but not really. I felt like they wanted something open world since that's what the big gachas are doing, but never fully committed to it. What I mean by this is that it's normal for these open world games to require you to go into the world and collect some kind of common material like a flower or something, in order to ascend your characters or weapons past a certain level. The same mechanics are present here too, but the issue is that there really isn't that many of each material in the world, so you have to go on a mind-numbing journey every day to get enough. What the game offers instead is this common box currency you can get from just defeating any monster, and this can be used to exchange for the materials in a shop, meaning that you don't actually have to explore the world every day. Kinda defeats the purpose of the game having open world elements, but it's what they opted into. Once you enter a major town area, that's when you can initiate the quests to spend stamina and other things. Overall, doing quests is extremely streamlined, since there's basically a teleport point every 10 steps, so you can usually just go straight to where you want to be. You can see how the game modeled itself after some of the most successful games in this genre, so you can expect most of its progression systems to be easy to understand. You have ascension stages at certain level thresholds, and the same applies to the pets. These are basically the weapon gear slot, and they'll help you out in combat, all with their different passives, and obviously every character would have their signature pet. You can limit break the pets up to 3, meaning that you will need 4 copies of them to max it out. You can also level a unit's skills with a different currency, and of course everyone's favorite portion of a gacha game's progression system, the RNG relics. Unfortunately, there's 5 different slots, and set bonuses go up to 5, meaning all of the pieces would have to have favorable substats. And the range that they can roll also seems to be on the more random side. Every single slot has variability in its main stat, and the substats can also be quite specific on what they buff. I have to admit, this is one of the more egregious RNG gearing systems I've seen, so it'll take you a while to min-max everything. Character dupes also go up to 6, all with their unique passives that powers them up in some way. You increase your player level using the usual methods, doing your dailies, advancing the main story, and spending stamina. I was surprised that just by playing for less than a week, I got to the mid-30s in player level. You can use stamina to get all the stuff you need to power up your units, but it seems that they've chosen to exclude certain quality of life features. There is a sweep mechanic, but you need a special token for each attempt, and I got exactly 0 of it during the time I played. There is a way to do multi-instance runs where you spend double stamina to get double the rewards, but I just found it quite odd that they do have the sweep mechanic in the game, just that it's locked behind some premium currency or only given out in very small quantities. That's progression in a nutshell. You've likely seen it plenty of times, but maybe with a few quirks that makes it slightly more inconvenient. So I got like 40 free pulls right from login, did them, and mostly got min rolls. That's when I held my breath as I opened up the rates info, praying that it doesn't pull a Genshin Impact. Well, it's definitely more than 0.6%, but for a game like this, I'd say 1.2 is still slightly on the lower side. Not to mention, it has the standard 50-50 system. If you do land an SSR, the chessboard animation flashes gold, and the pieces on the board tells you if you got any purples or golds. The game has a spark pity system at 80 pulls, but it does not appear to carry over across banners. Once you have enough, you can claim a copy of the raid up. As it's a spark, the benefit is that if you already roll the raid up before hitting pity, you can claim an additional copy of them if you continue. You may also have noticed that there's no separate weapon banner. This isn't entirely the case, but how they handle the signature pets in this game is kinda different. Combined in the same shop as the mileage pity, you can see that you can instead use some of the accumulated pull tokens to buy their signature pet, up to 4, as that's the max limit break level. In addition, you can also get other cosmetic items here related to the raid up target. To be honest, while I do like how the weapons are handled, it can also lead to some inconveniences. I have a slight grudge against these mileage-based rewards, as if you somehow got extremely lucky and luck sacked the raid up in one pull, then you have to keep pulling on the banner for the other stuff even if you don't want more copies. It's almost like a safeguard against players that got too lucky. You are playing a gacha game. They do want you to pull after all. The cash shop is also fairly generic, and due to how its UI is laid out, you probably already know where everything is. The Battle Pass has a premium track for around $10, there's a monthly pack of Gamba crystals for the best value, and other whale bait stuff, including a few skins. I mean, you're paying for a chibi avatar and a slightly styled PNG file, so I'm not sure how many people would actually be willing to shell out their wallet for this. But hey, nothing wrong with the cash shop. Now on to the winning question. If the game is mostly fine, why isn't it more popular? Well, to start, the main issue is that there's a lot of things that can go wrong for gacha games these days, especially ones that don't have established fan bases. If the game cannot secure a large enough player base on day one, then it's going to be fighting an uphill battle, as everyone is used to the month-long patch cycles like the modern gachas, and a lack of funding means that there's less certainty about the update cycle, as the developer may not have enough reserve resources to try keeping up with the expectations of these content patches. This means future patches may be delayed, which can cause existing players to lose confidence in the game's health. Less marketing to get newcomers, more work for the developers to get back on track. You can see how one problem snowballs into another, which is why in my opinion, a gacha game needs to have a good turnout on day one to establish a good foundation. Now, from all the stuff I've seen across the many gacha games I've played over the years, if it was up to me to make a game, I probably would not want my first one to be a gacha. There's actually a lot of inner workings happening behind the scenes to make the model sustainable, which requires a fairly experienced team. Is there anything particularly wrong with AllFiring? Well, no. The game itself is fine. It's basically copied everything a gacha game should have at launch, just that it didn't work out for some reason. What could it have done differently? Well, for starters, I'm not sure why the global version is basically just inferior with the lack of voiceovers. I really don't see how not having any helps their case, as at first I thought maybe the budget was just so low they couldn't afford it. Not having a PC version may also hurt sales. It's an action game, so it's natural that some people, especially Western players, would prefer to play on that instead of a phone. Another theory is that it's likely that the game was stuck in development hell. We know that it has been worked on since 2021. If this game actually came out then, it probably would have stood a better chance, as that was still the period where gacha games only started going mainstream, and modeling itself after one of the most influential and successful titles in gacha gaming probably would have worked, since it was one of the first to capitalize on this newfound interest in gacha games. In 2026 though, it's a much harder sell. The hope I have for the game is that since it seems to be running on a lower budget, there's still a chance that they can maintain its integrity for now. Although it seems that there hasn't been a significant patch since the game dropped, and the CN server is also stalling, which leads to the vicious cycle of people losing faith in the game and stop spending money, which leads to even more financial losses. There actually has not been a staple 2D ARPG that's popular within gacha games, so some games out there can always swoop in and make their mark. In any case, I think AllFiring demonstrates how brutal this market can be, and how even the smallest fumble can cost the game its livelihood. Now, to be honest, if this game somehow matched the Chinese version 1-to-1 and ironed out all the small bugs, I'm not even sure if it can bounce back. Newcomers curious about the game may see that the community surrounding said game is extremely tiny and has not grown since the game launched. Or they may take a look at the almighty revenue numbers and see that it's not off to a good start, which could hinder them from getting in. AllFiring is a case where the game has really done nothing wrong, but it got drowned out in a sea of mediocrity along with smaller, no-name gacha games. Even though there's no glaring issue with the game itself feels so unremarkable compared to what we have these days that no one has really paid attention to it. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it to intentionally cause a point of controversy to get some traction on people looking up your game, then fix it afterwards, to give off the impression that you are a receptive developer. Humans have a natural tendency to want to know what's the best or worst of something. If I showed you a tier list, I'm willing to bet that even though you don't know what this tier list is, your eyes likely first darted at whatever is at the very top and very bottom. With so many games to choose from and no time to decide, the odds that people will give much thought to the centermost tiers are quite low. And AllFiring is sitting right in the middle of that tier list. In any case, let me know if you have tried out AllFiring and if it truly deserves the title of Dead on Arrival. If you want to catch more gacha-related content, subscribe to the channel. In my quest to eventually phase out sponsorships in place of Patreon support, you can support for what I do for as little as $2 a month on there. As always, thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and have fun out there.